My opponent believes that physician-assisted euthanasia should be a right that all patients are opted to have. However, the current law in California and most of the United States, except Oregon and Washington, hold that physician-assisted euthanasia is an illegal practice. My opponent is attempting to argue that the current law held in Oregon, which is that Oregon openly and legally authorizes active assistance in dying patients, should be the standard for all patients in California. Physician-assisted euthanasia, or physician-assisted suicide, however, is morally wrong because the physicians get to play the role of God and often pressure the ill patients to hasten their death so that they are not a burden to their family or their providers. Not only is physician-assisted euthanasia morally wrong, it is also ethically wrong and should not be the legal standard for California. California should not adopt Oregon's law because physician-assisted euthanasia puts pressure on terminally ill patients to end their lives. There are other alternatives to suicide, such as greater pain control for patients, and physician-assisted suicide demeans the value of human life. The current policy on euthanasia and physician-assisted suicide that is upheld in Oregon is called the Death with Dignity Act. According to Oregon's Death with Dignity Act, the first year's experience, the law allows terminally ill Oregon residents to obtain from their physicians and use prescriptions for self-administered legal medications. However, the legalization of this law in Oregon has some grim side effects that are overlooked in the process of PAS, or physician-assisted suicide. It is feared by many that if California and the rest of the United States adopts Oregon's law, that many terminally ill and dying patients will be pressured into going along with PAS in order to fulfill the wishes of their families or loved ones. According to the book Handbook for Mortals by Dr. Joanne Lynn, the very old, the very poor, or minorities, and other vulnerable populations might be encouraged to hasten their deaths rather than to burden their families or the healthcare system. If terminally ill patients are pressured by their families, there is potential for abuse because PAS may not be the genuine wish of the patient. According to the University of Washington School of Medicine, assisted death may be a cost containment strategy. Burdened family members and healthcare providers may encourage the option of assisted death. It is arguable that if PAS becomes legal in all 50 states, that terminally ill and dying patients will be hastening their death in order to fulfill the financial wishes of their family rather than their own. This puts unnecessary pressure on the patients, and it doesn't help their previous conditions. Terminally ill and dying patients should not have to hastily end their death because they are in pain, because there is greater technology in pain medication and sedation that allows the patient to live out the remainder of his or her life pain-free. Therefore, physician-assisted suicide need not be an option. According to a Northwestern University article, modern medicine now has more power than ever to relieve pain experienced by terminally ill patients. Today, specialists in palliative care believe that if all patients had access to careful assessment and optimal symptom control and supportive care, the suffering of most patients with life-threatening illnesses could be reduced sufficiently to eliminate their desire for hastened death. With advances in medication, patients could be kept alive for much longer than expected, and they could live their lives pain-free. If the state of California adopted Oregon's law of legalizing physician-assisted suicide, officials would run into many problems on issues of the integrity of human life. The law was created in order to protect its citizens, and legalizing physician-assisted suicide would run into problems because society has a duty to oppose legislation that opposes the threat of life to the lives of innocent persons. The same is true for such hot-button issues as abortion, because there is a lot of controversy concerning the life of a newborn child and whether or not it should be terminated. Unborn child. In an article from Santa Clara University entitled Assisted Suicide, Right or Wrong, authors Claire Andre and Manuel Velasquez pose these questions that will come into play if physician-assisted suicide becomes legal in California. If assisted suicide is allowed on the basis of mercy or compassion, what will keep us from assisting and perhaps actively urging the death of anyone whose life we deem worthless or undesirable? What will keep the inconvenienced relatives of a patient from persuading him or her to voluntarily ask for death? What will become of people who, once having signed a request to die, later change their minds, but because of their condition, they are unable to make their wishes known? And once we accept that only a certain quality of life is worth living, where will we stop? When we devalue one life, we devalue all lives. In conclusion, physician-assisted suicide or physician-assisted euthanasia should not be legalized in California. Although advocates of physician-assisted suicide will argue that it is what is best for the patient, that is not entirely true. Life is precious and should be valued, and even though someone has come to the end of their battle with a disease, hastening their death is not necessary, because there are many options that patients have to live out their last moments pain-free. Oregon calls their assisted suicide law the Death with Dignity Act. But is having a doctor help you kill yourself really dying with dignity? Fighting until the end is the way to die with dignity, and doctors can make that fight as comfortable as possible.